There are a variety of types of pollution that exist in American society. One of the types is thermal pollution. Now, thermal pollution from an environmental health standpoint is not really a major human health problem, and its major problem is presented as an ecological problem, where it may reduce the amount of oxygen that a river is able to hold, which may run off certain fish species. And it can also act as a fish attractor, which, depending on what type of fish you are, that may be a good thing or a bad thing. Fishermen in particular enjoy these in the winter months where cooling tower water goes out into a river or a stream and may actually act as an attractor. Thermal pollution is sometimes called thermal enrichment by industry, but from our standpoint, it's not a major environmental health problem. Soil erosion and sediments are not immediate human health problems either, but in terms of by volume as a pollutant, sediments actually represent the largest pollutant in America. They are the largest pollution source. Now, these sediments may present as turbid water, which decreases photosynthesis. So you're usually not going to have an algae bloom when they can't get sun to do photosynthesis. But they can present different types of problems in the future. So when water is turbid, less ultraviolet light means that microorganisms that may be co-located with the sediment may be able to evade natural solar disinfection. Also attached to the sediment are in some cases pathogens, possibly fecal indicator bacteria like E. coli, and nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen. So if those particles or those nutrients are attached to the sediment, that may present problems for future algal blooms once the water clears up. Another problem with sediments is that ultimately the sediment has to settle out somewhere, and in some cases it may fill up a reservoir, decreasing flood capacity. Also, sediments may land where our benthic organisms, or the macroinvertebrates that live on the bottom, where they live. So if the rocks and riffles where these benthic organisms live are filled with sediments and they're not able to get underneath of those spaces, or the riffles are covered up with sediments so that oxygen is not brought into the environment through the activity of water running over riffles, things like these hellgrammites and stoneflies, as well as mayflies and other organisms, they may disappear. And if these clean water indicators that are also fish food disappear, then fish species diversity may decrease, which could have an adverse effect on the actual designated use of the stream. Sediment also, in many cases, is loaded with excess nutrients. So when you have sediment problems, in many cases, you may also have nitrogen and phosphorus co-located with it, which may fuel algal blooms, and in some cases the algal blooms may be harmful from a human health standpoint, and in some cases they may be harmful from an oxygen depletion standpoint. Despite doing a lot of photosynthesis in the day, at night they may do a lot of cellular respiration that steals the oxygen from the animals, including the aquatic insects and the fish. So we need to control soil erosion. This is not a new problem. The Soil Conservation Service was established in the 1930s, actually 1933, by President Roosevelt as part of the New Deal. During the 1930s, we had the Depression, which was also impacted by the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl was largely due to a lot of poor agricultural practices, an adverse climate, and it resulted in a lot of lost soil. So we learned a lot, and there was a lot of education for farmers and loggers in the East, farmers particularly in the Great Plains in the Midwest, and the Southeast on how to take care of their soil. The Soil Conservation Service has become the Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as NRCS, and they often partner with our nation's land-grant universities. The land-grant universities were already around in the 1930s. In fact, the land-grant universities were created by Senator Morrill and President Lincoln during the midst of the U.S. Civil War, because President Lincoln and Senator Thomas More believed that if you can educate people, they'll be less likely to go to war with one another. And if you can educate people on matters related to agriculture and mechanics, they'd be less likely to rely on other human beings to engage in slave labor, so that you could have mechanized agriculture. And if you could have mechanized agriculture, that would deal with the big issue of their time, which was slavery. So the land-grant universities in the Midwest were singular institutions: Ohio State University, Michigan State University, Penn State University. In the Southeast, where slavery still existed and where segregation definitely was prevalent, land-grant universities were founded at places like the University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University, University of Florida and Florida A&M University, North Carolina State University, and NC-A&T, Agriculture and Technology. These land-grant schools continue to partner with the Soil Conservation Service's new form, which is the NRCS, and they operate through the Cooperative Extension Service. They provide more information than just soil control, erosion control, and so forth. They provide gardening tips and nutrition information. But if you live in a county and you're having soil erosion problems, they're a great resource to reach out to. Now, what are they going to try to tell you to do? Well, they're going to ask you to reduce soil loss through practicing BMPs, or Best Management Practices. And most BMPs, nearly all of them, from a soil loss standpoint, are aimed at reducing erosion. So there are a variety of techniques that we can engage in for reducing erosion. All of these we will cover here in the upcoming slides. 1. Don't leave soil that is barren. Get it covered. Apply grass cover. In some cases, just applying grass seed is not enough. Birds in the wind or rain will blow it away. So having seed with straw is preferred. In some cases, you can roll this stuff out with the seed and straw, where the seed is impregnated in the straw. Sod, which comes from sod farms, can also be laid as a much more rapid way of getting the soil covered. If you can't get seed and straw down, just having mulching materials cover the surface, or even gravel, is better than nothing. For areas where it may be hilly and you've got exposed terrain, such as a logging road that goes up a hill and it doesn't follow the contour very well, or a fire line that is constructed as a fire break for wildfire control. When you have these types of environments, the addition of water bars, which run at an angle on the hill slope, allow for the water to not form rills or channels through erosion. Instead, it slows them down and directs the water and diffuses it over into the vegetation. So water bars or diversion channels are particularly helpful in hilly environments. Now, some cases the soil is still going to make it and it's going to still be eroding. How do we keep the soil out of our stormwater and out of our rivers and streams? Well, we can install what are called ditch checks or stormwater filters. So this sandbag here will prevent the sediment from making it through, but will allow water through. Same thing with these hay bales as depicted here, and same thing as this stormwater ditch check at the top figure on the right. Other alternatives include silt fencing. Nearly all construction projects, including transportation projects, in Kentucky and most states require the addition of the silt fencing. Wind and water can make it through the fencing, but sediment stays trapped and cannot exit the site. New construction projects where there's a lot of runoff often are required to have sediment basins installed, where the water flows down a creek or a ditch into a grassy area and the water slowly infiltrates into the soil, with the sediment being left behind and the water, either when it gets so high, exiting the area, or when the water gets, able to actually permeate into the soil. So by slowing the water down and taking off only on what's on the surface, the majority of the sediment will settle. There are other situations where we know that sedimentation is a problem, and it's when you have stream banks that get eroded. In some cases, they're eroded from cattle that are going down the hillside. So one of the steps is to get the animals out of the stream by installing fencing. In fact, animals that actually go up and down these slopes do not grow as well, do not put on as many pounds as providing them water or pumping the water up and out, and animals trying to go down slopes like this are more injury prone. Also, once the bank is destabilized, it's important to re-stabilize it or get it stabilized. The addition of vegetation, such as black willow trees, you can actually use the tips of black willows and stick them in the ground, and they will get established as actual trees. Unlike other trees where you have to plant them by the roots, black willows have this unique ability. Another option is to install gabion block or some type of rock work. Gabion block, which represents these stones here that are encased often in some sort of fencing material, can be installed with heavy equipment. Gabion, G-A-B-E-O-N, is a very common type of rock used, and you can see this example of how it can be used to prevent further erosion of this bank. Also, the addition of stones. So those are the major types of soil control BMPs, or best management practices. In future videos, we're going to get into stream pollution with respect to like wastewater and human waste and wastewater treatment plants. But for now, focus on these videos, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at jason.marion@eku.edu or by phone. Thank you.